Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and I'd like to welcome you to my character creation video for Pathfinder 2. Or currently it's still the Pathfinder playtest. So a lot of this information might be subject to change in the future, but it's still going to be a year or two before the playtest is complete from my understanding. So let's go ahead and get into it without any further ado. So we've put together a little bit of a checklist that we're going to be following that's based pretty much completely on the one that is recommended by Paizo in their playtest material. We're going to be following that pretty much step by step, with one exception being that we are not actually going to be taking some of the feats when they say we should be, because in practice, the time that they say that we should take some of those feats doesn't really work out, since it can oftentimes clash with future feats and future abilities you'll be getting from different areas. We'll get into that more when we get there. But to start with, the first thing you want to do is, first and foremost, the same thing we want to do with any character that we're creating. We want to consider what kind of character it is that we want to make. What class, what ancestry, what's our background going to be. You want to peruse all of these entries to kind of get an idea of what's going to fit your concept the best. What personality are you going to have? What type of character are you going to be playing? Are you going to be a moody anti-hero paladin? Or are you going to be a, let's say, I don't know, like a drink-loving singing fighter who likes to pretend that he's a bard but really isn't good enough at what he does to be one? Consider your concept first. Peruse the different entries to get a feel for what's available to you and how you can best build that, and then from there we move on to the first step, which is selecting our ancestry. So we've got my most recent character for the Pathfinder playtest that I'm going to be playing in, starting, I believe, this Saturday, Rodir Ibrieth, an elven alchemist. So obviously, the ancestry I've selected with him is elf. Now, ancestry is going to affect a few things. It is going to affect your total HP at level 1. It's going to affect your stats, just as it always has. It's going to affect the languages you can choose, and it's going to provide you with what are called ancestry feats. Now, this is one of the biggest changes from Pathfinder 1 into Pathfinder 2. Pathfinder 2, the ancestry feats, a lot of those are the previous racial abilities that you could select from and potentially swap out at first level in Pathfinder 1. Now, this system isn't perfect. Some of the changes they've made with the ancestry are a little bit wonky. Biggest among them being the idea of, really the biggest example I've seen is with half-orcs and half-elves, which are themselves an ancestry that you actually select by selecting the half-orc or half-elf ancestry feat as a human. So they no longer have their own entries. That's one really big difference. But with the half-orc especially, dark vision is something that is not available to them until level 5, which, when you think about it, that does not really make a whole lot of sense. Because, I mean, in essence, what it's saying is you wake up one day and suddenly you can see in the dark. After you're already 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, just one day in your adventuring life, you woke up, oh, hey, I could see in the dark now. So yeah, the ancestry feats thing definitely does have its share of issues, and that's something that I think Paizo should definitely work on, but not a terrible idea in and of itself. So when we select our race, our ancestry, we get certain things that are affected, certain things we need to jot down. We need to note what the effect on our stats is. We need to note the languages we can choose. And so for our stats, for an elf, we get +2 to intelligence, +2 to dexterity, -2 to constitution, and another +2 bonus to put in any stat that we wish. And yes, that does mean you can actually put that +2 into Constitution to cancel out the negative effect. However, and we'll get a little more into this when we go into stats, when you're putting together your stats with the pre-selected things done from your race or your ancestry, excuse me, your class, so on and so forth, your background, you cannot boost a stat that has already been boosted by your ancestry, class, or background. So, as an elf, I get +2 dexterity, +2 intelligence. I can't put my free +2 being an elf into dexterity or intelligence. They've already been boosted. But I can put it into Constitution to cancel out the negative effect. We'll get into that more later once we move on to that. So we've selected elf. We've got that jotted down. It grants us the +2 dex, +2 intelligence, +2 to any one stat we choose, -2 to Constitution. It sets our speed at 30 feet and gives us 6 health from our ancestry. So moving on from there, we are now needing to select our background. And for background, we have actually gone outside of the book because we have, as you can see right here, we have the Pathfinder Hopeful background. Now, Pathfinder Hopeful is not a background provided by the core playtest book. That's because the Pathfinder Hopeful is a campaign background specific to the playtest campaign. So you won't find that one in the book. However, there are a wide variety of backgrounds available in the book, and generally speaking, they will give you different effects like free feat, different effects to your skills, making different skill signature skills. Again, we'll get into all of these in a little bit. But suffice it to say, the next thing you want to do, you want to look at your backgrounds, select your background. Now, another thing to note is your background, as I mentioned earlier, does also affect your stats. You get 2 additional stats to choose from for your background. Now, one of those is always going to be a free stat that you can place anywhere, but one of those is going to be a specific choice that you must make, and usually it's a choice between 2 different stats. And you just select whichever one works better for your character of the 2 choices it gives you, then place the free one wherever you like that is not somewhere you've boosted with your background already. So for example, let's say you select a background that gives you a choice between 2 stats. One of them must be Constitution or Intelligence. You decide to put it in Constitution. Well, your free stat now cannot go in Constitution because you've already boosted that. So, after we've selected our background, now we finally move on to selecting our class. And in this case, we've selected the Alchemist. And the class is going to give us the largest variety of abilities. It's going to have by far the biggest effect on how our character functions. Pretty much everything that our class provides us is how we're going to play the game. In this case, I have selected the Alchemist, and I did this because in Pathfinder 1, the Alchemist ended up being my favorite class, so I was very curious to see what is different between Pathfinder 2 and Pathfinder 1 with the Alchemist, and I'll go into detail on that in a separate video. But for now, we select the Alchemist, and then we have to determine, the first thing we have to determine when selecting our class is what is their key stat. Their key ability. You can see here in this section, Class DC, we have a section here called Key, and that is for the modifier from your class's key ability. The reason you need to determine your key ability first is because that ability is the ability that your class is going to boost. Whatever your class's key ability is, you get a +2 boost for that stat when you select that class. Your class also determines your starting health. In the case of the Alchemist, I believe my starting health was 8. Let me double check that real quick. Yes, Alchemists start at 8 plus their Constitution modifier health. So, that's something else you're going to want to jot down. We've got now the 6 health from Elf ancestry and 8 health from the alchemist class. So that together gives us a total of 14 before we start including our stats. From there, we're going to want to note a few more things. We're going to want to note how many skills we can select. With alchemist, I believe it was a total of 6 skills, not including any that come from our background, and we get a choice of three signature skills, excuse me. And so, as you can see here in this section, I've got this on a form fillable PDF so you can note what your signature skills are, which skills you've selected, and we'll get into what this TEML means in a little bit because it's a little bit further down. And from there, you will determine your proficiencies with weapons and armor. You're going to determine your proficiencies in your skills, all of that stuff. And actually, it's coming closer than I thought. That's where you get this TEML on these different areas. This indicates your proficiency. Your proficiency has 5 levels. If it's unmarked on your sheet, it's considered untrained, which basically gives you, I believe it gives you a -2 to your rolls, -2 plus your level, to whatever the roll is. T is trained, which means you add an amount equal to, I believe, 1 plus your level to whatever the skill is. Or I believe it's 1, but let me double check that real quick. All right, I've double checked it. So for untrained, you get a proficiency level. It's equal to your level plus whatever level your proficiency is. So for untrained, it's your level -2, which means at the lowest, you're getting a -1 if you're untrained in a skill. You're getting -1 to whatever that skill is because it's your level -2. Level 1 -2, -1. At trained, you add your level. At E, expert, you add your level +1. Master, M, your level +2. And then finally, legendary L, your level +3. Now, most of your proficiencies will not be able to extend above expert, but with certain selections, such as signature skills, you will be able to eventually increase them to master or legendary rank. So, moving on from there, let's continue into the other things that your class provides. Your class is also going to provide different class feats. These are going to determine a lot of the abilities you get and a lot of how your different class effects, your different class special abilities, such as alchemical bombs, the creation of alchemical items in the case of alchemists, are affected. But before we select any of that, we need to actually figure out what our ability scores are. And we have our ability scores located right down here in the lower left corner. So, let's go over once again the scores that we've got. So as an elf, we get +2 to dexterity, +2 to intelligence, -2 to constitution, and then a free +2 to put wherever we want. So, as an alchemist, our 2 primary stats are going to be dexterity and intelligence, with intelligence being our key ability. So we want to really focus on our dexterity and our intelligence. Our third biggest stat would be constitution, depending on how we're building ourselves, but I'm building this character to sort of remain more at a distance. His role is to lob bombs and take pot shots with his crossbow, not to suck up mutagens and get in close. By the way, for those who are aware of how mutagens work in Pathfinder 1 and Pathfinder 2, they are pretty different. Just a little something to note. So, we're going to start by obviously putting the +2 in Dex, +2 Intelligence, and the -2 in Constitution. Now, that would normally bring our Constitution down to an 8 because all of your stats are baseline 10. Now, that would bring our Constitution down to an 8. However, we don't want to have a negative Constitution, so we're going to put our free 1 in Constitution, which brought it up to a 10. From there, we move on to the Pathfinder Hopeful background, which gave us a choice. I believe the choice was between Dexterity and Constitution. For the specific ability, we chose Dexterity, bringing that from 12 to 14. And For the free one, we chose Wisdom, bringing that up from 10 to 12. Now we select our class, the Alchemist. That gives us another +2 to our intelligence. I'm mistaken. The Pathfinder Hopeful, and this is important. You do need to note when and where you put these specific abilities. Pathfinder Hopeful, we put our free one into Intelligence. That brought it up from 12 to 14. So now we select the Alchemist class. That gives us another +2 to Intelligence, because that is our key ability, bringing it up from 14 now to 16. And finally, once you've selected all of those, you now get 4 free stats to put in any ability you like. Same rule applies. If you've boosted an ability with one of those 4 free stats, you cannot boost the same ability twice. So we're going to put it into Dexterity, going from 14 to 16. Wisdom going from 10 to 12, Intelligence going from 16 to 18, and Charisma going from 10 to 12. This is all going to work in with the selected background and the image I had in mind of this character, as well as the skill selection that we make with the Pathfinder Hopeful, which gives us the ability, it gives us the feat called Additional Lore, which allows us to select an additional lore skill. Lore is largely your replacement for professions in Pathfinder 2. So we select the additional lore skill, it becomes signature, and in this case, we have cooking lore. Excuse me. Now that we have our stats figured out, this is when we now move into applying the abilities of our class. And this is where we're going to figure out our health, our saving throws, so on and so forth. And so we start after applying the very first ability of our class, which is our class's bonus to whatever their key stat is, in this case intelligence. This is when we move on to figuring out everything else. And the first thing we have to figure out is our hit points. Now we need to take our ancestry hit points, plus our class hit points, plus our constitution modifier. It doesn't have to be in that order, but I find it simpler to keep it in that order. So our ancestry, Elf, gives us 6 hit points. Our class, Alchemist, gives us 8 hit points, and our constitution modifier is 0, meaning it adds nothing else. 6 plus 8 gives us our total of 14. From there, we now move on towards figuring out our class DC. Class difficulty check is going to determine what creatures are going to need to roll to save against a lot of your abilities. And it's going to be your key ability plus your level plus the baseline of 10. So for us, that is 4 plus 1 plus 10. Our baseline class DC is 15. Elf Ancestry gives us the speed of 30 feet, which we should have noted earlier. And from there, we now move on to determining our saving throws. Now, you're going to want to check with your class what the proficiency bonus you have for each of your saving throws is. It's going to vary from class to class. As you can see, alchemists are expert in both fortitude and reflex saves and trained in will saves. In the end, this gives me a total saving throw setup of 2 fortitude, 5 reflex, and 2 will. From there, we're going to move on to our skills. This is when we determine the amount of skills that we have trained. And this is going to include the ones that come from our backgrounds and the like, and how many of them are signature skills. Now, as an alchemist, we normally get, I believe it is, let me double check real quick how much it is exactly that we get. Okay, so I was remembering it correctly. Alchemists are trained in a number of skills equal to 2 plus their intelligence modifier, and they can select a number of signature skills based on what it has in the alchemist entry sidebar on the second page of the alchemist entry. I'm pretty sure it was. So for our alchemist signature skill, we went with Arcana, Crafting, and Medicine. We also get the additional signature lore skill from the Pathfinder Hopeful background. We decided to go with cooking lore because that's fitting in with the kind of character that we're making. He's of the belief that alchemy started in the kitchen. Fans of Full Metal Alchemist should know exactly where I'm getting this from. And in total, we have a total of 8 trained skills because we also get 2 from our background. So this is also when you're going to determine, when you're determining what your class trained skills are, all of that stuff, check your backgrounds too. Add in the skills from that. Just do all the skills at once. And when we move on to selecting feats, that's when we're going to select our ancestry feats and the like as well. It's easier to do all of that stuff at once because then that way you don't run into a situation where if you've selected something earlier, like say you selected one of your ancestry feats when you selected your ancestry, but then you come back and you find, oh, my class just gives me what this ancestry feat gives me already. Now you don't have to go back and completely rechange it. You can just do it all at once. Makes it a little bit simpler in my opinion. If you prefer to do it the other way, that's entirely up to you. My opinion, it's easier this way. So we have become trained in acrobatics, arcana, crafting, diplomacy, medicine, and stealth. These are the ones we've trained in from being an alchemist, and the 2 we are trained in for the Pathfinder Hopeful ability are Pathfinder lore, or Pathfinder Society lore, and cooking lore. So from there, we now want to determine the different abilities that our class gives us at level 1. And for the alchemist, that is determining how we're able to interact with the alchemy crafting skill, how we're able to craft the different bombs and tinctures and elixirs that we're able to make, how many we're able to make, and so on and so forth. So the first thing you want to note as an alchemist at level 1 is your formula book. You get a formula book with space enough in it for up to 100 different alchemical item formulas. However, you have a total of 8 level 1 formulas that you can choose from in there. I'm going to go down here a little bit to show you the ones I've selected. On this character sheet, which I've picked up from Reddit, this form fillable character sheet, I've noted it in the magic and alchemical items section. Now, not every character sheet is going to have this, but the abilities that I know, the different items I know how to make are Alchemist Fire, a Standard Antidote, Bottled Lightning, the Eagle Eye Elixir, a Minor Elixir of Life, Liquid Ice, the Smoke Stick, and a Tanglefoot Bag. And I've checked off in my inventory the different ones that I have made. I'll go into better detail in a different video once I've actually gotten the chance to play the Alchemist and get an idea of how it feels in game. I'll go more into detail on the different abilities and how they work then. For now, we just need to note what we get in total. And another thing that we need to note is right down here at the bottom, our resonance points, RP. Resonance points are what determine how many of these different items we're able to make. In the case of alchemists, it determines how many alchemical items you're able to make each day. The more resonance points you have, the more you're able to make. One key feature with the alchemist that you need to note is that resonance points are calculated differently from the other classes. That's why I'm bringing it up here. One of your class features is your resonance points are not based off your charisma score. Other classes base their resonance points off their charisma score. Alchemists, however, have a special ability, a class ability at level 1 that causes their resonance points to be based off their intelligence. Hence why you see it's listed as charisma here, but I have my +4 there, not my +1 from charisma. That's because alchemists base resonance off of intelligence. That is another one of their level 1 abilities. And lastly, apart from feats and the like, which we will go into in a very short bit, the last thing we want to note is our quick alchemy action. Now I have this on an actions and activities tab on the character sheet here. Again, not every character sheet is going to have this, so just find a place where you can reasonably put this. And this is a special action that alchemists can take. Quick alchemy enables them to quickly make a bomb, an elixir, whatever, a batch of these things in the field, in combat, on the fly, without doing it as part of their morning prep. So you could potentially leave resonance points open to make different things later on. And so you can see here, the action is Quick Alchemy. The traits are, it's an alchemist ability. It costs a minimum of 1 resonance point, and you need to have alchemist tools to do so. So moving on from here, this is when we're going to select our feats. Now, as you can see, we start with our ancestry feat. We gain Keen Hearing. That is the one that we have taken for being an elf. It gives us bonus to our perception whenever we are using the seek function, to the seek ability that comes with perception, to specifically listen for things. By the way, let me see, here we are. Perception, you have it listed under your senses. Perception is no longer a separate skill of its own. It's actually a class-based ability. Different classes will or will not be trained in perception. I'm pretty sure most of them are. This is also where you note the different senses granted by your ancestry, such as low light vision, which is granted to all elves, and your perception is equal to your wisdom plus whatever your class proficiency in perception is. So you can see we have a perception of 2. We gain, I believe, with the Keen Hearing ancestry feat, we gain a +2 bonus and are able to extend the range of our hearing when using the Seek ability to 60 feet, I believe it is. And we also gain a bonus to hear things in hiding and hear things behind hidden doors and the like. First class feature is the alchemical crafting feature that we went over. That's what teaches you, that's what will determine for you how many different items you can craft a day, how alchemical crafting works, so on and so forth. And for feats, we take the quick bomber feat, which allows us to much more rapidly draw and throw our bombs. So we don't have to waste as many actions in a turn drawing a bomb, throwing a bomb. We can actually draw 2 at once, then throw 1, throw the other, draw 2, so on and so forth. And lastly, for skill feats here, we got additional lore from our background. From there, it's very simple. We're moving on to buying equipment, determining all of that stuff, buy your equipment, buy your weapons, so on and so forth. You start with 150 silver pieces to purchase what you wish. Make sure to check the breakdowns for the different item costs, the different coinage breakdowns in the, I believe it's within the first couple pages of the equipment section of the rulebook. It should have a chart there that tells you how the different coins break down into the lower amounts. For the start, you really only need to know how silver pieces break down into copper pieces, and to make it simple, every 10 copper pieces equals 1 silver piece. So if you're buying something that costs 1 copper, such as, 10 torches, which I believe actually, yeah, the 10 torches total only costs like 1 copper. It would cost you 1 copper piece, meaning if you had 20 silver pieces, you would go to 19 silver pieces, 9 copper pieces. So determine that, determine your different spells and abilities that you have, determine your weapons, the different equipment you're carrying with you, so on and so forth. You'll be able to figure out your bulk from that. If that's assuming your GM is even holding you to all of that. And then once you've got your selections made, your bulk is figured out, so on and so forth. By the way, a little note for if your GM is holding to bulk rules, grab a backpack or a sack, something like that. I would recommend a backpack because, as you can see here under the properties, you can hold up to 4 bulk worth of items. My total max bulk is, I don't know why I didn't note it here. My bulk for encumbrance, once I hit a total of 5 bulk, I'm encumbered. If I hit max bulk, I'm over encumbered. Backpack can hold up to 4 bulks of items, and if you're carrying on your back, those items are counted as negligible bulk. They don't get counted. So I stick my heaviest items, my alchemist tools, my formula book, and the 10 torches, which together add up to 1 bulk, in my backpack. I'll go into the rules of bulk and how that works in a later video, I think. Again, after we've play tested, after I've gotten a feel in game for how these different things work. But yeah, basically make your purchases, note the different properties of your weapons, so on and so forth. Purchase your armor, note any properties if needed, you know, ammunition and consumables. You'll notice I put my consumable alchemical items that I have in my inventory here: 2 Alchemist Fire, 2 Bottle Lightning, 2 Tanglefoot Bag, 2 Elixir of Life. We'll note again why that's all 2s in a later video. And from there, you also have your equipment section. Once you've purchased your equipment, move into your attacks, determine all of that. Determine your weapon proficiencies. Alchemists are proficient with simple weapons and their alchemical bombs. They are trained in both. They are trained in light armor. So we take simple weapons, light mace and dagger, both of which are finesse weapons. It allows us to hit a little bit better. We're not going to be getting into melee combat much. At least we're going to be avoiding it like the plague as much as we can. But if we do get in, we picked a couple finesse weapons. We might not be hitting hard, but we should be hitting consistently. For ranged, we have our crossbow, we have our bombs. Bombs have a 20-foot range, crossbow 120 feet. Now you'll note here, I didn't list any damage for the bombs, and I didn't list the damage type. And that's because, as I note here, that varies depending on the bomb you're using. So that's something you're going to want to keep handy if you're playing an alchemist or something like that. Any class that has a way of dealing lots of varied damage, spellcasters are especially big in this. You're going to want to make some kind of way of noting. You're going to want to have some place, rather, on your sheet where you're going to want to note what the damage is, what the damage type is, of the different abilities, so on and so forth. But with all of that done and out of the way, with all of our selections made, our character, Rodir Ibrieth, is ready to play. So, next time I see you guys in a Pathfinder playtest video, it's going to be after playing the first session of the playtest. I'm going to be going into a first impressions and basically just going into general thoughts on how the different abilities feel, how the different changes feel, how gameplay-wise the mechanics feel. We won't be touching on the role play because obviously that's highly dependent on the group. So, with all of that said and done, dear friends and gamers of all stripes, I do hope that you found this video to be helpful. What are your thoughts so far on the Pathfinder playtest? For me, I'm cautiously optimistic. There are a lot of things here, actually, that do remind me a little bit of 4th edition. And I'm going to be honest, as I mentioned in my previous video where I was talking about the disenfranchisement I'm starting to have with 5e, I didn't care for 4th edition. It just really did not feel fun to me. However, Pathfinder 2, I noticed elements of it there, but it seems better put together overall. The changes made, while there are some of them I certainly don't like, and while there are some of them that I certainly think don't make much sense, such as the ancestry change I mentioned earlier in this video, for the most part, they seem alright. So I'm going to withhold full judgment until I'm able to actually play the game and get a clear feel for how it all handles. But I'd like to know what your initial thoughts are in the comments below, so please tell me what you think about this. What are your thoughts on the different ways in which character creation works? Do you think that this is going to end up being a worthwhile type of game to play, or do you think that it's just going to sort of fall flat on its face? I'm kind of curious to find out how everything's going to feel. My playtest group actually did do a brief one-shot while I was away the other day, taking my friend up to LAX, and from what they were saying, gameplay-wise, it feels really good. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll see how it handles. If you liked the video and you would like to see more, please feel free to leave it a like and subscribe down below. Make sure to hit that bell notification icon to get notified, but even more important than that, open up that description tab down below and follow me on social media. That is the best way to get regular updates from me whenever my videos are posted. You can find me on Minds, Facebook, Twitter, and Gab. All of them have links down below. Speaking of links down below, I also have a Patreon page open. If you like what I do and you would like to donate to me to enable me to do this even better and eventually enable me to actually physically improve my recording setup with new equipment, feel free to follow that link and donate to me down below. Even if you don't donate, though, I'm just happy for every view that I get, every bit of engagement that I get. I do this mainly because I enjoy it. However, it is a lot of work. I didn't want to open up a Patreon this early into the life of my channel, but hey, sometimes, sometimes you need to make that decision to try and get your finances a little bit better in order. So, you can follow me down there, link in the description below if you would like to donate. I am running a donate what you want model. Lastly, check the description down below to follow my BitChute account. I have a channel over on BitChute as well. Every video I have made here is mirrored over there. And furthermore, you will find some exclusives over on BitChute as well. Things like my breakdown of the anime Darling in the Franxx and how we can relate the failings of its story to ways that we can avoid such failings and such tonal shifts in our game have become exclusive to BitChute because, well, let's face it, YouTube isn't exactly the safest place to put anything that's going to have clips from any kind of show or movie in it. BitChute is a lot more fair about that sort of thing. Last of all, and certainly not least, follow my link to my Phoenix Rising webcomic that I am working on with my friend Hannah from over at Hair Illustrations. We've just recently posted our third proper episode. It's actually the fourth post, including the prologue that we shared earlier a few weeks ago. And yeah, we are officially moving to a once a month posting schedule as opposed to twice a month, every 2 weeks. We're posting every 4 weeks now with longer strips that should feel more satisfying to read based on some of the feedback we've gotten from earlier strips and our readers. So follow that down below. The new episode went up 2 days ago, just this last Saturday. Check it out. It's coming along really nicely. And with all of that now said and done, dear friends and gamers of all stripes, as usual, my name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and as always, it is my sincere hope that you continue to roll high, roleplay well, and game on. Have a lovely day.